So I will call the November 14th meeting of the Airport Commission to order at 5 o'clock. Chairman Commissioner Dan Drake is participating remotely as his or her physical attendance is unreasonably difficult. And as such, all votes will be taken by roll call tonight. So, starting off the agenda, are there any comments or suggested changes on the agenda as drafted? Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted. Moving on to the minutes of October 10th, draft minutes. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, we'll consider those adopted. We have the warrants of 1025 and 11-1 for ratification. Any comments or concerns? Could we have a motion to ratify those two warrants,
I'll
please?
make that motion.
Second.
With that, we'll do a roll call. Commissioner Buscarin,
Aye.
Copham,
Aye.
Lanzer,
Aye.
Drake,
Aye.
Gasparo, aye. We'll move right on to the pending leases and contracts as laid out on Exhibit 1. Manager Rafter, would you like to run through those for us?
Yes, and just the latest, I'll make sure everybody has the updated Exhibit 1. First contract is with MHQ for $30,098 for a purchase of an F-150 pickup truck for the security department in accordance with our capital program. The next is a contract with Anise Electrical Services. They were the apparent low bidder at $31,300 for the fuel farm floodlights. That's 2 fiberglass light poles. And then a contract with McFarland Johnson for $74,900 for engineering, design, and construction administration services associated with the restaurant vestibule enclosure. The next is a contract amendment with Stanley Access Technologies. There's no money involved. It's a language change to their agreement that they have to seek 3 quotes when getting hotel rooms when they do their preventative maintenance visits. And the next is a contract with Island Carpet for $40,250. They are the winning bidders for the replacement of the restaurant flooring, and that is part of an insurance claim from February 16 when the sprinkler pipes broke.
Are there any questions on any of the contracts?
I have some questions on the Anise, I believe it is, Anise Electrical Services for the doorway. It says that it will be meeting all ADA.
But, I'm sorry, Anise is for the electrical light poles.
Okay, well, someplace I've got something about
The
the door.
vestibule.
Where's that door?
Yeah. I think you're talking about the
Oh,
restaurant
the vestibule,
vestibule.
I'm sorry. Anyhow, I was questioning about the automatic door, if they have that. They said they would have everything up to the standard of the ADA. And I realize that it's not, I think if you have to really go to code if it's over $100,000. And this, if I realize, is not that much. So I didn't know if that was considered as part of it or
This
not.
is simply the engineering phase of it. The construction bids came in at 115, I believe.
But they do mention the door in their thing, that it will meet the ADA approval in this ADA accessibility. And I wanted to know if that was part of that
I
included.
don't know if it's an automatic door or not.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out for you.
Thank you.
I had a question on the same contract, which is, if I noticed that they've got a good amount of money in here. This is obviously a pretty high contract in relation to the actual cost of construction. And I'm wondering, when they have so much design work in here, what were the bids based on? In other words, they have money in here for, $16,000 of schematic design and bidding. So has that already been
The
paid?
bids were based on this, yes. This design work has been done.
And we're just approving the contract now?
It's a reimbursable one, yeah. We needed those to go out to bid, so.
It just seems, so we've already, just $64,000
We
to
haven't,
design 100 $100,000 addition.
And that's 10,000 less than what the proposal was for the engineering.
Well, I mean, as you know, this has been my sort of project I've been after for 5 years. I'm happy to see it going forward. I think it's going to greatly help with the climate control. I just hope that we can, keep this in check to some extent,
Okay.
I think it sounds like maybe we're stuck at this point if we want the project to move forward.
And that's something I need to discuss with McFarland Johnson. They kind of jumped the gun on this one, so.
Any other? Go ahead, Dan.
Mr. Chairman, I just wonder, was this discussed with McFarland Johnson ahead of time? These weren't competitive bids, or were they?
The bids were competitive, yes, but this was an assigned task order to McFarland Johnson for design work.
Okay, I think in the future, I frankly wonder if they were the best people to do it.
Well,
Whether an architectural firm could have done it for a lot less.
the Jacobs estimate was 65,000, and that's what we put in our budget for the entire project, construction, design, everything. And
Yeah.
here we have construction bids at 115.
Well, yeah, I think we've learned a lesson here, unfortunately.
Right.
Hopefully we have.
Well, and as we get into further discussion on the budget, this is one of many capital projects that we're going to have to review and look at and prioritize, so.
This we're stuck with, right, at this point?
I'm sorry?
We're stuck with it at this point.
With the design work, yes.
Okay.
And was there a reason, I'm getting confused here, was there a reason that we did not do Jacobs? Is it because it was too much information, or didn't have what we're exactly looking
They
for?
already have a number of other projects that they're working on that they're very busy on other projects that they're rectifying the situation on.
It seems it's going to cost us a whole lot more money.
I mean, if I don't know that it would matter if it was Jacobs or McFarland Johnson, the engineering, if the bids come in at 115. The difference, I think, is that Jacobs gave us an estimate of 65 all in, which wasn't realistic, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, the question that comes to mind is whether it wasn't over-designed somehow. And I mean, I think we just need to be very careful on little projects like this going forward, that it's not, that we're not getting something more that we need, both in terms of the design and the project itself. So, but be that as it may, we are where we are. We got to pay this one, I guess.
No, I agree. Going forward, you're absolutely right.
It may be worth a discussion, at a staff level with them that there was concern, just to keep them
I will.
knowing
Oh,
that,
absolutely. Yeah.
that this raised everybody's eyebrows. It's for that scope of work. It's concerning.
Very much so.
Anything else on any of the contracts?
I'll move approval of the 4 contracts.
We have 5. Well, one's a contract amendment. 4 contracts.
I have 3 contracts and 1 contract amendment, so I will not vote. I will let somebody else move to approve all of them.
We received a new Exhibit 1 on the table when we got here. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Drake?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Is there any public comment at this time for matters that are not on the agenda? Mr. Scale?
Yep. Good evening, my name is Christopher Skettle. It's actually in tandem with something that just came up. You put out to bid the repair of a floor at the restaurant, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that obviously the lease is up at the end of this year for the restaurant. And what I'm trying to find out is, we've had a chat with the manager and assistants and so on and so forth. When can one anticipate that the RFP, it's obviously 2 years later to get an RFP out to replace a floor? Do we anticipate that, is it going to take a similar amount of time, or do we think it's going to be a lot quicker? Or what can we do to expedite that situation so we can either decide to close the doors completely or put a bid in on the pending RFP?
We did recently have a long-range planning subcommittee meeting, which will be reported on towards the end of the meeting, discussing the RFP. And in terms of the actual timing, I would have to defer to the staff.
We're hoping to have that out within the next few weeks.
A few weeks to get it on the street.
Okay. Well, just so everybody is aware that,
Right.
that there is an issue, and this RFP that just came out was hoping to be put out 2 years ago in a few weeks.
So I think we're trying to time the floor repair, obviously, with time of year at this point. I hear your point at that, but we're well aware.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks.
you very much, guys.
Are there any other public comments? Sullivan?
Hi, I'm John Sullivan from Nantucket Marine, and my partner Sergey Chumar. And we just, I don't know if our timing's right on this. We're interested in the property on Sun Island Road that we recently put a bid on. And we're just wondering if you guys have any additional information for us, if you want to hear some of our thoughts on.
You got to speak into the mic, please. Yeah, thanks.
I'm sorry.
Just because it's being recorded.
Okay, the question is about the property on Sun Island Road. For maybe 2 years or so, we have heard that it's possible that it's coming up for lease and that they were looking at chunking it up into sections. Our properties at the end of the road, we're right on top of it. We've been very interested in leasing, or I don't know if there's even a possibility of buying some of that land. But we just want to know, we had we knew the bids went in, and we just want to know if there's any kind of thoughts that you guys have on it, or.
Sure. What I would share with you is you'll notice on the agenda, the last item, we're having an executive session meeting tonight.
Okay.
And one of the items is to discuss the real property with respect to Sun Island Road and the Bunker Road lots.
Okay.
So I think that we're probably limited in our discussion in open session at this point, but we will be considering it later on tonight. And ultimately there will be more action on that. It's just a matter of exactly what's going to happen is going to be subject to the deliberation of the commission in executive session.
Okay.
So we're aware that there is interest in the property. We're interested in, revenue to the extent that we can help sustain airport operations. And so if it could be a win-win, that would be ideal. Obviously, as it was with the last time, this is subject to, Mass General Law and open bidding, which you're well aware of. And I think we need to, discuss that. and
I
then-
think,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I think one thing that is important for Mr. Sullivan and others to hear is at the present time, the Airport Commission has no plans to sell any of that land.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's, I think that is something we've been in agreement on.
Okay. All right, we just wanted to kind of.
No, I appreciate the interest.
Yeah,
and
we are
good neighbors
interested
and know that you're there.
And, so it probably makes sense for us to maybe come to the next meeting after you've had an opportunity to.
I would say that
Hash some stuff
probably
out.
just continue to check with the manager, and he can update you to the extent that certain items may remain confidential for a period of time, as a result of negotiation strategy of the commission.
Okay.
But ultimately, any bidding or proposals are going to be public.
Okay.
It's just a matter of timing and figuring out exactly the direction we take. And
I think it's fairly safe to assume that we will have a response to the bids fairly soon.
right.
Yeah, I would just like to comment that in addition to Mass General Law, we do have federal FAA regulations we have to go by too when we put this out.
Okay,
So we all have our hoops.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.
Thank you.
And your interest. Is there any other public comment tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to pending matters. Mr. Rafter?
On the general fund repayment, we sent a letter back to FAA with further justification on the questions that they had, and tried to explain as best we could with the details. We also requested a meeting, an in-person meeting with us, the Finance Department, and FAA, so that we could explain in detail exactly what it is, because it's a fairly complicated process in terms of the deadlines and what was spent when the town had to provide a subsidy. So we're still waiting. We haven't heard anything back from FAA on that. Brookfield Assets, we're still waiting for the documents to get in alignment. It's a very simple thing, but I don't know why it's taking so long with them. The crew quarters development, I had a phone conversation with our attorney, Dave Mackey. He has been in contact with legal counsel from FAA, who is now going to confer with the compliance division at FAA. The FAA legal counsel is supportive of our position and believes that we should be able to simply move forward on our own with this project. So by the end of this week, our attorney was supposed to hear back from FAA counsel as to the status of their discussion with the compliance division.
Okay, sounds like we'll look forward to an update on the same at the next
Hopefully,
meeting.
Next meeting, yes.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on the pending matters? Hearing none, move on to agenda item number 6, the T-hangers discussion.
Again, this is in the queue with everything else, and we're beginning the analysis to look at the alternatives and what the advantages and disadvantages are for the various types of operation for that.
Okay. Anybody have any comments on the T-hanger? Moving on to item 7, the Retrix ground service equipment lease discussion.
We have a request from Retrix, I guess multi-requests. They're looking to store their ground service equipment that they support JetBlue with. And they initially had asked for some land that they could possibly put a tent on. And we checked with legal. Because it's aeronautical, we can simply assign land and negotiate a lease. I'm very hesitant to start putting up tents all over the airport, and then the next or subsequent request that they had was, can they just lease some land and put tarps over the equipment? And that's definitely something I don't want to see. It becomes a nightmare in terms of we've had awnings, tents, or other things blow down and become hazardous conditions. So I personally don't like we have one tent. Yes, it's very functional. It's not very pretty. If we could lease it or lease them some land for a tent, I would suggest that we don't, because I think it opens up a Pandora's box for a number of things that it becomes a tent city. In addition, we do have a Hangar 5 RFP that should be out very shortly that they could propose on. So there is that potential opportunity for them. So I would just like to get the commission's sense on your thoughts on that.
I agree. I don't want to see a lot of tents out there. And I think, as you say, with the tarps and all, that could be very dangerous when they blow off. It's like my grill cover. So I'm sure they're bigger, but it's the same thing.
Would they build anything more
So what are
substantial?
their options?
Yeah.
The other airlines ship the equipment off island and store it or take it back into one of their other operations. They could store it on island at a storage facility, or they could build something a little more substantial, or put in a proposal once the Hangar 5 RFP's out. Again, timing may not be ideal for them, but they're coming to us in November to store ground equipment that they knew since June they were going to have to deal with this issue. So
Where is the equipment now? Is it just sitting on the?
it's sitting on the ramp.
Good either.
No, it's not. And honestly, we're looking into storage fees eventually for that, because it's just, in addition to an eyesore, it becomes a challenge when we go to try to plow snow.
True.
So your suggestion at this point is to?
I would not lease the land for a tent or tarp operation, and we'll just continue on. They'll have to either find another solution and/or longer term, if they want to put in for the hangar building, they can do that.
Do you need a motion to that? Or is that just,
I don't think we need I
Okay.
don't think we need a motion. I just wanted to make everybody aware of it and get concurrence so that we're not creating an undue eyesore, if you will.
Well, I think we have a consensus, do we not, that we don't want a tent or tarps on the airfield.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I was involved in a lawsuit at an airport where a tent got blown loose, caused a lot of damage. Cost several $1 million to settle the damage. It caused damage to other airplanes. So I agree with the wind on this island in the wintertime. We don't want a tent or a tarp.
Brick building.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to
Bunker.
moving on to finance.
You have in your,
How about offering them a piece of land on Bunker Road to put up a tent?
I believe if we do that, they're going to have to participate in the public process as everyone else does. If it's inside the fence and it's aeronautical, we have the ability to simply negotiate with them. So we can offer them a piece of land if they want to build something. It's whether or not they want to.
That might be maybe that'd be the short-term solution, but it might be the longer-term solution.
Well, and I'm getting a sense if they want to go from a tent to a tarp, they're not going in the direction of building permanent, so.
Right. Well, it's worth mentioning, perhaps.
Yeah,
Others
I'll
agree.
certainly mention it to them.
Right, I think that just to stay on that discussion for just a moment, it's not that we're perhaps necessarily opposed to the use. It's the it's the enclosure.
Yes, okay. I will relay that.
So okay, we're moving on. We have a preliminary draft budget before us, and draft. Do you want to?
I think it's a preliminary, very rough draft. We are about 30 days ahead of schedule from last year, so we don't have this anywhere close. I haven't scrubbed this. I've only looked at a couple of the line items. So I just want to go through where we are in the process and what we're looking at. Our retained earnings have been certified at 1.9 million for last year, so actual, we're doing well. We've increased our retained earnings. Understand, too, also, as I mentioned last year, this budget, and as we go further each time into the budget process, bless you, we have more and more what I'll call disciplined history. Jamie worked 2 years ago on establishing a number of the line items and breaking them out. Last year was probably the first solid year where items were taken where they, I'll just say it was additional financial discipline in terms of adjusting or taking items out of the proper accounts so that we know if something's going in deficit, we need more money there instead of just taking it from one because there's funding. So we only have 1 year of solid history with that. With that being said, what we're looking at is the revenues, fairly conservative approach right now, loss due to employment and operations continuing to decline, as well as the law enforcement officers reimbursement. We're hearing from Washington that TSA is most likely going to be cutting that program, so that's about a $90,000 hit. And then on the expenses, we're looking at an increase of about $302,000. The main drivers are the salary and wage, but the salary and wage, I have to use a little caution. A significant chunk of that was categorized in a different line item last year. So there's that, and there's two different line item adjustments. One is for the increases that were proposed. They were shown in another line item. And if you recall, last year, we had a position for an SMS manager that after the budget was approved, we converted it to an operations position. It was a lower rate, but the SMS came out of the administration line item, whereas the operations came out of operations. So it's adjusting a number of things, and that's what accounts for the large number in salary and wages. The professional services, $53,000, is driven primarily by a new PFC application, which will be getting reimbursed through the PFC process. And then debt service, that is essentially right now the big unknown and something that we're going to be focusing on. In addition to going through each of these line items and scrubbing them again, or scrubbing them for the first time, the major driver, I think, this year is a lot of the debt service. You may recall last year we reduced the cap in the fuel revolver to increase the amount of money that flowed into the operating budget. That helped quite a bit, but we still had a reliance on, we thought we were going to have reliance on retained earnings of $1.1 million. We came out actually ahead by $607,000. So yes, we're still relying on those other sources of funding, the fuel revolver and the retained earnings, but it's somewhat of a balancing act. One of the things that we're focusing on this year is using retained earnings to pay down the smaller debts that we have rather than having to take them long term. And Jamie did a good job here in breaking out some of these, but we have to refine them. For example, at the bottom here, you'll see the transfers from the fuel revolver. And there's a number of capital items that total about $883,000, including the transfer to the stability fund, which I'll say we did that last year, I think, for the first time. It was a great decision. We actually have 2 retirements coming up that are not budgeted or unfunded that we're going to be using that stabilization fund for. So we're going to replenish that. And then the other 2 of the projects that we have on the fuel farm equal about $500,000. We're going to be looking at a new agreement with a fuel supplier, and the idea is that we would wrap that into that agreement, whether it's a 4 or 5 year term, and then spread the cost over the agreement through a repayment. So instead of having to pay $500,000 up front, we would pay $100,000 to $125,000 up front. So I guess what I'm saying here is two things. This is 3 things. This is a very rough budget. We internally have not gone through line by line and scrubbed it. We have looked at a couple of the line items, and the third is that we're doing a review of all capital items. As you heard, we had a discussion about the restaurant vestibule. We have a vault project that's $350,000 over. We have a PA project that's $200,000 over. We have a GSE garage that's estimates are coming in on the low side at $1 to $1.2 million. These are all things that we're going to sit down and prioritize and look at and determine how much retained earnings we want to apply to offset our debt to continue to reduce or minimize our debt service and the impact on the operating budget. So I apologize that this is extremely rough, but as I say, this is a bit earlier than last year. I will have within the next 2 to 3 weeks to you a much cleaner, more updated, I'll say better numbers. Even now, though, we're simply showing utilization of $700,000, $300,000 from the fuel revolver, and $400,000 from the retained earnings to offset or balance the budget. So I'll be glad to try to take any questions, but as I said, it's a work in progress. We just started this, if you will. We've had a couple of quick looks at it, but it's and I can't help but stress again, this is a budget. It's a budget document. It's only as good as the information we have historically. We don't always manage the budget. We manage the actual as best as we can, and that's why we're seeing the stronger financial results at the end of the year.
It's mild.
I'd like to make a comment, if I may,
Yeah, please.
which is that if you look at at the end of fiscal 17, at June 30th, 17 or July 1, 17, between the retained earnings and the fuel revolver, which is a total of more than $3,800,000. This does not include the money we have in the PFC account, if I understand correctly.
Correct.
So, and I don't really look at these as being any different. The source is the same, but they're all as a result of efficient operations, and they're in essence revenues over expenses. So I don't, from my perspective, it doesn't really matter which one of these comes from the money comes from, because we'd have to, it's the same, essentially the same pot, although obviously for accounting purposes it has to be treated as different pot. So I think the approach you're taking, I'm not saying this is what we're going to finally approve, but I think the approach you're taking is exactly the right one. And encourage you to go ahead on this in this fashion.
Well, thank you.
I think that the decision, the commission ultimately will be what percentage of this overall pot, which also includes the PFC money, we should be, holding in reserve.
And that's, Dan, that's exactly where we're heading in terms of looking at, we need to have that money if we go through a couple of bad years too. So
That's right.
so that's what we're going to prioritize our capital items and possibly defer some of those in order to just make sure we're not paying everything up front and getting it all paid down, and then we're broke for the next 2 years or going back to a subsidy
I
situation.
think at the bottom of this first page, there should be a summary showing the projected balance of those three sources of funds, the enterprise fund, the fuel revolver, and the PFC balances at the beginning and end of the year. Total up.
Beginning and ending of the actual, the
Fiscal
prior
year.
year. Yeah,
For each
okay.
fiscal year.
Right, okay. We can do that.
And in terms of timing and schedule, will we be expected to adopt this at the December meeting or January?
I think typically it's January.
So we can review the next meeting and then any comments on the final
Yeah.
for adoption in January?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Perfect.
'Cause last year, we didn't meet with the town manager last year until the end of November.
And that's when we
Yeah,
only sort of had
early,
the
so-
one look at it.
Yeah.
I would also say that the decline in the LEO funding from TSA shouldn't really come as a surprise, because it's already gone down from 150 to 90.
It is, but at the same time, we're hopeful that Washington will have a change of heart because of some of the activities that have taken place in non-secure area with Fort Lauderdale and some other serious activities that they would hopefully support our law enforcement.
I understand that, but
But you're right, it's
hopefully we
been
won't.
declining.
But
Yep.
Is it
given the
TSA?
issue, it wouldn't be a surprise, all other things being equal.
Is it TSA's call or is it legislation?
I believe it's legislation. It's going to be Congress that's going to determine whether or not it makes it through. Yeah, say it's TSA that actually disperses it, but. they
Right,
don't-
right,
they don't
right.
have
But I
any
just wonder who
control
makes
over
the
it.
determination
Yeah, I
whether
don't-
they're going to cut off the
I
Leo.
don't think TSA has a say in that.
Any other questions or comments on the draft before us? Looks good, thank you.
Jamie.
We'll look forward to this at the next meeting. Moving on to the manager's report.
On the project side of the house, we have our CIP meeting tomorrow with the FAA and MassDOT. We'll be discussing the vault resolution, which is estimated at about $350,000, and how much each entity is willing to participate or able to participate at. Right now, potentially, of the $350,000, it looks as though FAA could fund up to $191,000, MassDOT about another 120, which would require us to put up about $40,000. So we're going to have that discussion with them tomorrow. So what we've heard so far is that they agree with the solution, and they will do what they can to work with us on funding as much of that as possible.
On that, just so I don't, if I could real quick, and that's the bringing in the
480
the
feet.
480.
Yes. On the FIDS PA contract, the contractor is seeking an additional $197,000. We have a number of different options that we're exploring, both with our legal, and we're going to be discussing with FAA and MassDOT tomorrow. It stems
Is
from
this something we should be taking up in executive session at this point?
Yes, it could end up into a legal issue, so I'll talk to Mr. Mackey about that.
I think probably at this point.
Yeah, I don't know that we can do it tonight, but,
Agreed.
okay. Ramp Area 3, Phase 2 paving is complete. The project is ahead of schedule and under budget, and they're looking to complete the entire project within the next couple of weeks if the weather can hold up a little. They can do the seal coating. If not, they'll come back in April and do the seal coating. The geometry issues underway. We're meeting with FAA to determine the specifics on what the alternatives may be there. The GSE storage garage design, you may recall the estimates came in very high at 1.7 to 2.3 million. The fire station bids came in. The analysis for their outbuilding shows it at about $96 to $125 per square foot. We felt comfortable then that $200 per square foot would be a good estimate for our purposes for budgeting. Our engineering firm is telling us that they think it's more like 400 because they think that they're getting economies of scale and mobilization and other things that are not taken into account. I don't agree with that, and I'll be having a discussion with them about it. And again, if it comes in at 1.7 or 2 million, that's a project that definitely will be deferred. We just don't have the funding for that right now. The restaurant enclosure, we discussed that. The bids came in at 115, and again, we're going to be looking at that as well as the other projects that we have in line. On the RFP and bids, we discussed Bunker and Sun Island Road somewhat. We did receive 2 bids for each. However, they were not acceptable. They're below our minimum threshold, and we'll be discussing that later tonight. The restaurant flooring bids, we took care of that earlier. Hangar 5, as I mentioned, we had a call with legal just the other day, and we should be issuing that RFP shortly. We're going to be looking into the fuel supplier contract, which we would include some capital projects in there. Our de-icing truck bids, we received 2 bids. We had to reject both of them, and it will be re-advertised. Both had issues with not signing the appropriate documents or some such items. So, on the operational side, we are looking at a multifaceted project to address our hold room capacity issues, and we're hearing that our seasonal service next year is most likely going to be increasing. So we're looking at being able to accommodate that as best we can. Retrix has expressed an interest in flying from Nantucket to LaGuardia. They started the service out of Hyannis. We have taken care of the logistics so that they're capable or able to do that. We're just waiting now to see if and when they plan on launching that service. Our full-scale exercise will now be slated for April. As soon as I get an exact date, I will let you know. And one other date to remember is annual town meetings, April 3rd. Ready to go into statistics or any questions before I go into that?
Does anybody have any questions on any of the projects?
The statistics are not great news. September, operations continue to decline, 27%, and year-to-date, 13%. The GA operations were down 11.9 over last year, September. The enplanements are down 15.26 over September of last year and 8.4 year-to-date. Cape Air and Nantucket Air saw decreases, while JetBlue and Tradewinds and Retrix all saw increases in employment. Retrix, it's kind of an anomaly there. You can see they only had a handful of operations last September when they started. In the Boston market, Cape Air experienced a 29% decrease, while JetBlue saw a 6% increase. And overall, the market saw a decrease of 19%, or 1,062 enplanements. Again, continued competition from the boat in the Hyannis market as well as the Boston market. The DCA Washington National, JetBlue had a 74% increase, driven primarily by additional flights this year. New Bedford traffic decreased 31%. Cape Air White Plains traffic is down 50%. And again, the Hyannis market saw a total decrease of 393 passengers, or 21%, with Cape Air down 83%, Nantucket Air down 59%, and Retrix carried 764 passengers. So again, the competition with the boat is very steep. The Vineyard decreased 39%. On a good note, Jet A gallons for September were up 7.7%, and even more critical, for October, they're up almost 31%, jet fuel sales. Again,
How do we figure that, given the fact that operations were down 10%?
the majority of that, I think, is we still had nice weather. The operations are primarily driven by the commercial guys who are doing a lot of the frequencies. And with nice weather, we get a lot of corporate traffic. And we did have a couple of JetBlues staying a little longer, so that helps the uplift on jet fuel. The avgas was down. I'm sorry? Avgas was down 20%, and year-to-date down 20%. In October, it was down 12%. Freight dropped also in September, and slightly up year-to-date. FedEx was up 8%, and the others were down significantly. And noise complaints dropped from 14 to 4, with a summary in the packet of each of the complaints. On the personnel side of the house, Nantucket Employee Empowerment Team will be holding their annual Employee Appreciation Recognition event at the VFW this Friday at 5 o'clock. And we have conducted internal interviews for the operations position, and we're looking to make a decision on that very shortly. Also in your packet is the 2018 Commission meeting schedule, so that you can plan ahead for next year. And that concludes my report.
Retrix is now offering, which I don't know if it's just for this month, but still offering something early in the morning and late in the afternoon, I think special fare.
They're offering that this month. I went online and looked, and I don't know if it's a particular date, but I did see it in December as well. It's called an Islander fare, and it appears that it is designed for Islanders going over in the morning, coming back in the afternoon and evening.
I will say that it was like $4 more for my daughter to use that versus Highline
That's,
on the same day.
Yes,
So that might help a
it's
little.
very competitive with the boat.
Right,
And I must say, I took it the other night, and it was a 9-minute flight.
that's what we like.
Yeah, I did it too, and it was nice.
Yeah. So I'm glad they're continuing it.
Any comments on anything that was just reviewed? Moving on to the subcommittee reports. I would report that we had a meeting of the long-range plan subcommittee, and the draft minutes, thank you very much, are in the packet. And basically, the two main topics discussed were the restaurant request for proposal and the tea hanger discussion. Any questions? We're really following, basically staff is presenting to the subcommittee, terms that we might want to consider and some different alternatives that they're working on in terms of the structure of that RFP. And as we heard from the current leasee tonight, that's going to expire at the end of the year, so.
And we're looking to make it as appealing as possible, of an opportunity for anybody that comes in. We've had discussions with Chris, some of the challenges that he faces, so we're looking to take that into consideration when we put out the RFP.
Any questions, comments?
Is there likely to be more than one bidder on the restaurant RFP, or?
That's our objective. We're trying to get stimulate some competition. We have a very good operator. We like, that, but we'd like to have some competition as well. I will say that it is just, for anybody to start an operation on Nantucket, a food and beverage operation in January, February, or March is kind of a difficult thing. So we may look to start it in, May 1st or something.
Okay.
One of the things we discussed at the subcommittee was having a sort of a bid alternate that it includes the gift shop. So try to maybe get that taken care of, hopefully at least on a seasonal basis, and try to find an operator. Maybe it's more appealing that, someone's already.
Someone could do the whole thing.
Right, because
Yeah.
they're
Right.
going to have employees. And,
Yeah, if we can give them opportunities that may be seasonal, where they can make additional income to offset, get them through the winter for the full operation of the restaurant, that's something we look at. One other thing that was discussed was the right of first refusal for an opportunity that may present itself in the post-screening area. We think there may be something that could be available there.
So try to be creative,
Right.
make it balance and work, but we'll have to see what we get back. Are there any other commissioners' comments? I had one which I had mentioned to the manager and sort of been ongoing, but as a result, I think it's probably highlighted island-wide from the recent storms and the events in Nantucket that we really need to keep a close look on the erosion and the fence location and, actions that we're going to take to be prepared so that, it's not something that should take us by surprise. That was my only comment.
I had one, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
which is those two damaged planes which sit off to the west of the end of runway 6. I've heard several comments from the public about them. They don't do the airport any good to have them there. From a public safety and peace of mind standpoint. And even though, they were very specific incidents, I wonder, what are the plans to get rid of those?
We are following a process, Dan, for derelict aircraft. In our rules and regulations, there's a section where we have certain abilities, and we have established a process where we put them on notice. We deem it to be a derelict aircraft. We assess and change the fee schedule that becomes very significant, and essentially compel them to remove the aircraft off the airport. We did that with a airplane that was there previously for a number of years, if you recall. We're following through with that as well. I'll just say each of them are in different status because of the time that they've been there. The one is more recent, and, we give them X amount of time to either rehab, do whatever they have to do, put it out to auction, sell, whatever. But then after a period of time, the clock starts ticking faster and the rate starts going up proportionately.
I just hate to see them sitting out there for years, and I wondered if there's any way we could speed up the process.
We're trying to. I know one we're getting very close to saying it needs to be off quickly, so.
Oh, did we lose you? Sound like we have a disconnect.
Well, I can share with whoever Dan's speaking to on the public, I have the same feeling. I do not want derelict airplanes on that airport. And I told staff, I was adamant about that. I have a very bad experience historically with derelict airplanes, and, whether they're cannibalized and used for parts, it's not a good thing. And we will move to get those off the airport.
For it's worth, I feel the same way about vehicles. So, to the extent we
If we can
can,
find the owner of a vehicle, we will.
well, sometime, at some point, we've got to, clean,
Legal with it,
get
yeah.
it cleaned up.
Okay.
And you back?
Sorry about that.
Okay, we're just still on the getting the derelict aircraft cleaned up. I think we're all hopefully in agreement on that to the extent that we can move that along. With that, is there any other public comment? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session per general law, chapter 30A, section 21A, clause A, review the enumerated executive session minutes. Clause 3, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. Clause 3, to consider purchase, exchange, and lease of real property with respect to Sun Island Road and Bunker Road lots, and to discuss strategy pending litigation related to the FAA Part 13 complaint, all of which the chair has determined in open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the airport, not to return to open session. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor, Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Ms. Topham, Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Mr. Drake.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.